story. Now hear those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Good evening, roomies, and welcome back to a special edition of Behind the Door with the Grey Rooms podcast. I am your host, Brooks Bigley, and with me tonight is Michael Zenke, the author of the Grey Rooms narrative story from midway of Season 2 up to our current season. This Behind the Door will discuss Season 4, Episodes 1 through 4. How are you this evening, Zenke?
I am doing good, man. I am glad to be here. Got my delicious seltzer water. Ready for a chat?
What flavor is your seltzer water?
Oh, I like all kinds. I'm doing some original right now, doing some OG. Keeping it classy. Yeah.
Have you ever had that seltzer water? It's called like Liquid Death or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, so that is some good stuff actually. It comes in a giant can.
Yeah.
Not bad at all. Very good branding as well.
Gonna say that's the only reason I care is because their branding is absolutely amazing. It's like murder your thirst with this water.
Yes,
there's no other way to sell water because water's so boring otherwise.
Wow. It's 3 seconds in and you're dishing on water.
Well, anyways, we're not here to discuss water. So I'm very excited to have you here. Like, we've never given you specifically this author treatment before, the Grey Room's limelight here. So yeah, thank you for doing this.
No worries.
There's so much to talk about. I don't even really not sure where to start, but let's just start here with Season 4 of the Grey Rooms. Everybody listening, knows what happens here every season. We have I wouldn't say a protagonist, but we definitely have a character who has to go through some shit, and then as the story goes along, we discover why they're going through this shit. And,
exactly.
I always love how everyone is so innocent in the beginning and you really feel for them. And so I'm already caught off guard because now you've introduced 3 new characters. This is the first time, that we have 3 people, at least together in the project that we're making aware to the listeners and fans.
Oh, and no, this is canonically, absolutely. This is the first time they're doing multiple guests. This is the first time, 100%.
Cool. Excellent. This is great because you can always correct me now and be like, nope, that's not canon. This is canon because you are the master author. Excellent. See, this is why it's so important you're here. So yeah, so I've been already lulled into a false sense of caring for these 3 characters per se, because they seem so innocent. Amani seems so noble in her quest to kill the vampires from her planet, and poor Finley is just he's like a robot with a heart that is trying to, well, not a robot, but a cyborg trying to figure out what the hell. But he's so innocent seeming. And then Zuck is just a all around kind of badass, just going through the flow. He just seems very here and now, and that's all he cares about. So what in the hell have they done to deserve this? We don't know yet.
No, and that's always the fun thing, right? Is let's take a step back, right? So yes. Last season 3, was sort of the culmination of. Oh, by the way, spoilers for Season 3 if you haven't listened yet. So I'm gonna pause here. If you don't want to hear the deep secrets, okay, you're still here. Yeah, so Season 3 was the culmination of a lot of work, both by the previous author of the frame story and myself, to set out to sort of explain what the Grey Rooms are, right? And finally, our guest in Season 3, Admiral Beckett, figures out with the help of his son, ? He figures out that the rooms are this. They're a scam. They're an attempt by a Duke of Hell to make up for lapses in soul tribute that he's lost over the years. In the last episode, we had that great competition, sort of 75% of the way through Season 3 between Bob and the Admiral, and then in the last episode, Bob does a little clarification, like, okay, why did he want to do this? And it's because the 6th layer of hell, originally for heresy, as you can tell if you've read Dante, the narrative of the Grey Rooms pulls from a lot of different sources, including the classics. the sixth layer was all about heresy, and obviously that's not a very big sin in a lot of mortal realms today. So the Duke of the Sixth Layer wants souls, because in hell and in the realms, souls are currency. So that's what set us up for season 4. Is Admiral Beckett becomes a member of management. Bob is sent away, ? We don't know where yet. Well, sorry, we know, but you folks listening don't know yet. And although you're about to find out pretty soon. Rolling into season 4 now, the reason there are 3 guests is because of the ramifications of the admirals joining management, and then as you heard in one of the preseason episodes, there is a very fateful meeting of the board. The different realms that all sort of bought in to make the Grey Rooms happen have not been happy for some time, and finally they force the representatives on the board, force the issue. The architect is forced to capitulate, even though she did what she did with Bob in hopes of forestalling any big changes. That was not enough for the other realms. And so what we see now in the Grey Rooms at the start of season 4 is the results of those changes. There are multiple protagonists. There are more than one attendant, and as I think some listeners have guessed, while Kryze is obviously a demon, Caliban is not. So we have yet to sort of learn inside the narrative where he's from, but not the Hells, obviously. So it is a new day in the Grey Rooms. It is a brand new tack. As we drive across the blasted wastes of the loci, between the loci, in our cool train. So yeah, that's where we are now.
I love it, all of it. I really appreciate too, just from the point of just telling a story, that for season 4, you've got these 3 characters now, and by having multiple characters, it gives us the opportunity, instead of having to do a thing where you got to write like their inner monologue so we can understand what they're going through, they can talk to each other, and that just gives for better storytelling, better information to partake, for the listener to partake in. But then you even up the ante by having the 2 attendants. I feel like it still translates the same, that Bob would have been a very interesting character to get more of his inner thoughts. And, you kind of played around with that. There's certain scenes where he might be talking to something, like he got a lot of his inner thoughts out through his haiku. Mm-hmm. But having Kryze, who is just, to me, she's just an unhinged demon that she just wants to kill them personally herself. But you got Caliban that kind of helps keep her back a little bit, but they vibe off each other, because I'm sure Caliban feels, more strong because he's with Kryze. But again, anyways, to allow them to talk back and forth just gives us, we have 5 characters now instead of 2, basically, that are going to be interacting. And that's just so important for this larger Grey Rooms world that you are unfolding here, because it's continuing to grow bigger and bigger, and you're coming up with so many new characters coming through, but everyone is important. Everyone is a chess piece.
I know Graham, from a casting perspective, really appreciates the size of the cast. I know he's a big fan of how many, but you're hitting the nail on the head, right? Like the thing that we've been trying to do over the last couple of seasons is just continue to push the frame story forward, so that because obviously the submitted stories are awesome, right? Like, and people show up every week for that cool hit of the fun and the new and the strange. There's so many wonderful strange stories inside the submitted stories, and so the frame story has always existed as a way to stitch those together and provide a little additional entertainment. And starting here with season 4, the thing that I pitched to the group many months ago now was like, let's make the frame story less a story and more of a setting. We have some big plans going forward, especially going into season 5, which obviously we're already talking about now, because of course we are. We have some plans related to that going forward, but for now, for in the here and now, this is our first baby steps, right? Like it's one of the reasons. I think the last time we chatted with Graham, we were talking a lot about like how modern storytelling, especially in pop culture, has to show its work a lot more than they ever did back in the day. Like they really, like, audiences are just so much more savvy as to what good storytelling looks like. And so you really do have to, like, you can't just jump from A to Z. You know, if you're Marvel, you have to release frickin' 32 movies or whatever so that you can have
Right.
Endgame land the way that it landed, right?
Exactly.
Now, do not want to in any way compare what we're doing, the frame story, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's the same principle, right? It's like,
Well, we're better than the Marvel Universe, so what are you talking about?
but it's very much the same principle, right? Like
Right.
we started out as this scrappy. You said it yourself, right? It was two characters. It was just Bob and Raymond in the room, talking to each other. We got a little bit of Raymond's inner monologue, and now 4 seasons later, it's a cast of several different characters, all with different points of view, in a new place, in a new setting, and I think people are going to be excited where the frame story goes this season, because there's a lot of twists and turns along the way. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and to expand on what you had just said, like if you compare season 4 to season 1, in season 1, you know, and I think that we canonically decided that Raymond was like one of the very first, right? That was the first iteration of the Grey Rooms.
So the way that the folks inside the project refer to it is that he was the first guest. He wasn't the first person that they tried to like do this thing with, but
Yeah.
like one of the things a lot of the listeners have commented on it, like you guys have talked about it a lot, but like demons obviously don't understand mortals very well, like at a very like deep level. They just don't get mortals. It's one of the things I think that's made Bob's journey so interesting, right? As he like starts to figure out what makes mortals tick a lot more. So what kept happening, like I don't think we've ever explicitly said this, but I think if you like sort of read between the lines, you can sort of get it. But like they kept throwing, they started the Grey Rooms project, and they kept throwing these mortals into these endless like corridors or whatever, or even just like caves and stuff. And then Bob would show up and he would like yell at them, and then they would go running through the things, and then they would quote unquote pick a door, right? Because they wanted to escape. That burned out quote unquote guests pretty fast, right?
Yes.
Because as we've seen, the mental stability of a guest is directly involved with how useful they are for the project. And so finally, after a lot of resistance from the warden, right? That's in some of the flashbacks we had in the What About Bob episode at the end of last season. You get to see some of this. The warden was very much not in favor of like quote unquote coddling the mortals, right? Like he didn't want to give them any. I think the line was like, "There's not even like razor blades in the floor anymore," like that sort of thing. So finally, whether it was the founder or Bob or whoever, like people inside the project were like, "Hey, let's try to make the mortals a little more comfortable, or at least feel more grounded," right? And so Raymond was our first success, right? That he was the first person in the Grey Rooms project to net out the sort of soul harvest that they were looking for in any kind of appreciable amount. And since then, there's been some number of guests beyond that, including obviously Todd. He had a stint in the rooms. And then, of course, Samantha, and then Admiral, and now we have Zuck and Imani and Finley.
Yeah, and you just summed up comparing season 4 to season 1. In season 1, Raymond was just scared shitless of what was going on. Bob just kind of used that to just scare him into doors, and then he'd come back through, and he was just all fucked up again, and then Bob just scared him more back into another door. It was just a bunch of chasing the mouse, kind of forcing it into its own doom.
Exactly.
And then in season 2, we kind of see, well, no, Samantha's a lot stronger. She starts fighting back a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I almost feel like given enough time, or given slightly different choices had been made, Samantha could have gone almost down the same path maybe that Beckett did. in terms
Maybe.
of just embracing it. And that's just my opinion. I'm not telling you that that's what your writings offer, but that's just what I think.
It's definitely the case. Oh, sorry. It's definitely the case, right? That Samantha was more, she had more agency within her own story. That's for sure.
Yeah,
And that's partially a function, right? Of like, you look at the rooms themselves in season 2, right? It's a big diff, right? From season 1, bare concrete block walls, flickering overhead lights, and then now we're in this like great, cool, old-timey hotel, right? Like that jump is really fun because it speaks to a lot of internal change within the project from season 1 and season 2. So yeah, absolutely.
And I think as a response to how Samantha's time through the projects went, I think ultimately that's what then set apart. That's what set management into thinking, well, we've really got to expand this even further, with this next person, which was Beckett. And I feel like maybe had Samantha's adventure not happened, then also maybe Beckett wouldn't have gotten as far, because it really took them interacting with Samantha, seeing how much more powerful and how much more important she was to the project than what they got out of Raymond. And then they have Beckett coming along. All of that kind of just slowly cascaded, I think, into the point of like, well, shit, should we let this human join us? So very important, the long con. Like you said, it takes like 30 movies to get to that final MCU movie that we discussed.
Exactly.
So you really kind of, and you're not going in the weeds here, but you're definitely creating bigger, larger stories to then pull back into this main thing. And here we are, season 4.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just the hope, right? And I feel like we've seen, folks responding pretty positively. It's just like, hey, if you like the frame story, if it's something that interests you, here's a little more, and here's a little more, and so far we haven't kind of gotten to, or in terms of feedback, we haven't gotten to a point where people are like, yeah, this is too much. Maybe we'll hit that point this season. I don't know. But certainly, I think there's still a lot of material in the setting to pull forward, just like you were saying, like pull forward. So
yeah,
we'll see what people think.
And there's this thing I forgot. I think is it called Chekhov's gun? There's kind of like this thing where the idea is like if you wrote about a shotgun over the fireplace in a story, if that's described in the setting, then that shotgun has to get used at some point, right? And
absolutely,
if it doesn't in the story, it should have never been written about. And you're really good, I think, about every time. Maybe that's why no fan has ever, quote, complained about it, because every time that you've introduced more characters or side stories and whatnot, there's always been a purpose. And even though if it's not evident in that moment when we hear it, an episode or two later, because I've seen people on Discord connect dots that way and go, oh, well, yeah, but back in this investment episode, we call them the investment from ... series of stories. People are using those as references to like, well, this explains this part over here. So definitely you have no Chekhov's guns
trying
in your writings. Yeah.
Trying not to leave any gun unfired. Yeah, no, that was why, we talked about this a little bit last season, but that was why the snake came back, because it was a fun kind of non sequitur from season 1 that I think folks, it was sort of a hanging chat out there, and being able to bring it in and make it a pretty relatively important part of the narrative in season 3. And now going forward, I think I've seen a lot of people, I'm not going to say it, but I've seen a lot of people, I think, guess how the snake is aligned and who the snake is aligned with, and where that all fits in. And it's like you said, it's really fun to watch people put the pieces together. Sorry, the fact that people can put the pieces together at all. This is like I don't know. This is a thing. As a commercial writer, I work with people relatively frequently that get nervous or worried when they see people responding to ideas they put out in the world and quote unquote guessing what they're going to do. And I'm like, no. First of all, no one is ever gonna like exactly 100% guess to every nuance the direction you're going to take a story. That's just not how storytelling works. But if someone does guess based on the things you've already put out there, some elements of the narrative you're gonna drop, that just means you're doing it right. That just means that people are invested and they can see what's coming down the trail. And hopefully, like the thing that I hope for, right, is like when you see stuff like that, it's people saying, and man, if they did that, it would be awesome. Obviously, if it's
Yes.
like, and I would hate if they did that, then that's another conversation. But a lot of times, I think in the context of the gray rooms, I've seen a lot of people being psyched about where they see things going, and that makes me really happy.
Yeah, that lets you know you're on the right path. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I
exactly.
mean, at least I'm on a I'm on a path. I don't know if it's the right path, but I'm on a path, and I'll take it. I'll take it.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Can we admit here that we can see what the fans talk about like on our Discord? So it's very pleasing to notice them, like you said, connecting the dots and being excited, like, oh, I really hope that this is what's going to happen, or like it's showing their investment
Exactly.
into the story instead of just like, well, wherever this is going, I guess I'll follow it. They're trying to be the driver instead of the passenger because they're really enjoying the story. So, yeah, hats off to you, man.
Heck yeah.
So, can I ask, like, how the hell did you go? So you joined us mid-season 2. You took on some characters. We've touched on this in some other behind the doors with the groups of us together. But how then did you ultimately just sit down? And I've done the preseason meetings with you where you sit down and you then discuss with us what you want for the future season, and you go over all the notes with us. And it's like your knowledge of religion is very deep. How do you do this? Like, how are you so good at taking, this typical knowledge that we all in real life understand, and then turning it into this like commercially viable, incredible story that engages us so well?
Well, I mean, I was an altar boy when I was a kid, so
Okay, I knew it had to be there in your heart somewhere.
oh yeah. So I grew up in on the south side of Chicago, Irish Catholic family. So Catholicism and sort of the Catholic Catholic mythology has always been sort of in my life. But I mean, like a lot of people that I think write for the Grey Rooms, I had a lot of weird interests as a kid. I was a tabletop role player from a very young age, and so you end up like reading a bunch of really weird stuff. Like, I think I read Dante's Divine Comedy for the first time when I was like a teenager. In between all the really ripping parties that get in there with the Divine Comedy. Anyway, yeah, I've, on some level, I guess the answer to that question is just like any other writer, I've had some of this stuff rattling around in the back of my head for a long time, and I've always wanted a chance to try and use some of it. Just like anyone else these days, I make heavy use of online research, obviously, especially in terms of like picking up. I've seen some people comment about the deep levels of obscurity of some of the name references that I've pulled.
Right.
And I appreciate that. But again, that's very much like, hey, the internet exists. It's a wonderful resource. But yeah, I think that the best way to say it is on some level, I've wanted to do something like this for a long time. And when I joined the project and we wanted to talk about what directions we wanted to take the world, to me, the way things have sort of panned out with the different realms and how they interrelate and how we can draw from different types of mythology and types of stories, that's the thing that gets me really psyched, because a lot of times narratives, for various reasons, and a lot of them are very good reasons, they sort of constrain themselves to a particular type of mythology. And we've got a fun sort of grab bag going here, right? Like we've seen Moth and now some other characters from the Grove pulling on sort of Fae, especially like the Shakespearean concept of the Fae, right? The Mount is a one, which we barely even started to scratch, but we met Beziel, the architect's sister, and we started to scratch on that fun, the flip side of demons, fun angelic lore. And then very few times now we've met Zivix, who obviously is a touchstone into Lovecraftian and sort of Cthulhu type lore. I am super psyched. It's going to be a while, I think, before we start to really incorporate the Far into more directly into the Frame story. But at some point, I'm sure this is not a surprise to anyone that's been listening now. At some point, I'd like all four of the realms to have a bigger voice inside this. The other three realms. Obviously, we've been very demon centric for most of the titles run. I'd like all three of the other realms to have a more active voice in the story. And just like we were talking about before, that's part of what season 4 is about. It's about opening up the world a little bit, and I am psyched to see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, opening up the universe, because oh man, I have like 80 things I want to say right now. It's so beautiful that, so you use religion as the premise, but you're not, like you said, you're not constraining to the rules of religion as what we know. It's just kind of the basis for you to start with. Mm-hmm. And how fucking unique is it that, so the Grey Room started with demons, and normally us being human-centric, we're like, well, yeah, humans and demons, that's all that exists in this universe, is, and angels too, whatever. But there's God and there's humans. And you're now opening that up to say, well, yeah, but there's other realities. As with season 4 now, we know that there's other worlds. But really, we know that just means there's it's multiple realities, per se. I don't know if Zuck comes from a different planet that's in the same universe, let's say, as the Earth that Raymond is from. We don't know that. We don't know that yet. But it's so interesting that how you've expanded that. Well, okay, let's say there was a god, there was a demon, or the demon, there was a devil. Earth would not be their only source of souls then, right? And you're showing how much bigger it is. It's more worlds, more souls. The universe is untapped, basically. There's untapped potential. So that's so unique to me. Also, the reason why I loved that Netflix show called Midnight Mass, because they also kind of took religion and absolutely put it on its end in such a believable way, using just stuff from the Bible to then be like, well, yeah, but vampires actually, haha. So I feel like we're doing that here. That you've come up with this sense of everything that you think that you know might be true, but it's only 5%. It's the tip of the iceberg. and so it's...
I'll take the compliment. I don't know if I would ever compare my work to Midnight Mass. That show there's some really excellent writing in that show. If you have not caught it, gentle listener, highly recommend.
Absolutely.
Great time.
Yeah, I brought that up in several other Behind the Doors as well. It's very well written. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But it makes that show makes your brain pop with the thoughts of like, everything I thought I knew about angels and God and this and that, but it could actually be this. And so with the Grey Rooms, I feel like you're doing that, with our fans and followers, that we all... I've never met someone that's like, who's God? What? I've never heard of religion before. And this isn't a debate about whether God is real or not. We're not getting into that here. It's just the idea of like we could talk Greek mythology, right? Nobody is arguing whether Zeus is real or not. We're not. We're just discussing the mythos there. So it's so fun what you're doing here to be like, well, yeah, but what about this? And then also this. And look, there's 8 other sides to this coin. And so it's absolutely entertaining beyond all hell.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's so far things I think are clicking along pretty well. I'm excited to see what people think as we start to get more and more into create. Like, we've already, again, if you diff if you diff between season 1 and where we are now, right? Like we're now on a train with 3 people from 3 different realms being attended to by 2 people from 2 other different realms, blasting across this crazy landscape and seeing, death riding upon his pale horse. Things have gotten significantly stranger and more complicated than we started, but my hope is that core idea, right, that kicked us off, Jason's original sort of vision, is still there, is still exciting, and makes people want to come back every week.
Yeah, it's a very simple premise. Hey, we need your soul. How are we going to get that from you? Here's how we do it. Listen to it happen. Yeah, it's a super simple premise. I really want to know, and I'm sure we're going to expand on this in the future episodes. But what the hell happened where they're like in a forest, but they're inside the train still? That threw me for a loop when I first in episode 4. So I'm very excited to see like how that magic works.
Well, I mean that one I can just talk about. Like that was me trying to make sure to call back to like, hey, it's still the rooms, right? Like in the manor, for example, right? Like and then back in the hotel, you had the nerdy term for it is temporal spatial claudication. It's literally like within the space of the rooms, stuff can be bigger on the inside, right? Like
it's a holodeck.
Yeah. Oh well. Think more the doctor's box, right?
Oh
like,
yeah. Doctor Who. Yeah. Okay.
It's so even though it's still technically like a train car, right? And I think I even had a mention there, like it's kind of got the general dimensions of a train car. Why not have a whole bunch of trees growing in there and have it sort of sit within a larger context and have birds fly in and out? Same thing with like, Zuck's, we haven't like seen, quote unquote, seen it on screen, but Zuck's little feeding tank down at the end of the train, and
Amani refers to
stuff.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's just like in the manor, right? Like Beckett was constantly, especially in the first couple episodes before he got his legs under him, Beckett was constantly like, I don't understand how the building can work this way because I'm in a place that couldn't possibly exist within the manor that I saw outside. And it's because that's just how the Grey Rooms work. They actively try to fight against the mortals within them feeling completely comfortable and kind of shift themselves around on their own. The nature of the rooms themselves and where that comes from is, I'm pretty sure, I don't have my notes open, but I'm pretty sure that is the subject of a Patreon only story for this year. So stay tuned.
Coming up this season.
Yeah, coming up this season. So if you're a patron, stay tuned for that.
Hell yeah. Real quick to go back, Samantha didn't know that she was not in a hotel. Like, she was convinced she was in a hotel.
Right.
Like, we know as a listener that, sure, it was all for scenery around her. She wasn't actually in a real hotel, but she thought she was. And then Beckett pretty much was convinced he had been brought by horse and carriage to a real manor. Wasn't really in a real manor. So likewise, they're not really on an actual real train. It's all part of this project that they're in. So yeah, that does explain why you can have a forest inside of a train car. But still, I think more. I'm like, there's a, like I said, Chekhov's gun. There's a reason why you did that. You didn't just be like, oh, and that would be funny, and then never to return back to something like that. So
nope. We'll swing back to it. Although,
yes,
yeah. I don't want to. I was going to say something, but I'm not.
So, it sucks that we got rid of Bob and that we're never going to see him again.
I know, right? Like, Graham's such a talented voice actor. It's a shame he's never, ever going to be on the show ever again.
Well, he said he was really tired playing this character over and over again. It was probably the worst part of his career in podcasting. I really bid him farewell wherever he goes.
So mean. Bob's not gone. Don't.
Damn it! You were supposed to feed into my joke here.
Well, listen. I'm imagining the Bob Squad right now, like listening to our words and freaking out.
We just lost half our patrons.
Yeah, don't worry, Bob Squad. Okay. He's closer than you. He's closer than you think. Don't worry.
Yeah, he's around.
Yeah. And some very interesting things I think are going to happen with Bob's part of the story. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Stay tuned, everybody. Mm-hmm. Can I ask you some other stuff? Maybe tangentially related to the podcast. Mm-hmm. How did you get into professional writing?
being the excellent writer that you are?
Oh man. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was a writer on the web back when that was a thing that people did much more casually. I graduated from college in 2002, and I got my bachelor's of science in computer programming and evolutionary biology. And so, of course, immediately, just within a few years after doing that, I was a games writer on the internet, which is, a very good use of my degree. And I'd always done fiction, even as a kid. I'd done fiction writing, but working online and having daily, sometimes hourly deadlines really helped to push me in terms of refining my writer's voice and becoming much more efficient and fast and all that kind of good stuff. And so when late in the 2000s, when I was kind of looking for a career shift, it seemed like a sort of a natural outgrowth to shift into games proper, and ended up getting to write some very fun stuff. I wrote for DC Comics. I wrote for for DC Universe Online. Wrote for Elder Scrolls. Wrote for Destiny. The actual way that I became a writer, I think, is much more interesting maybe than how I got into games writing, because it's very interesting. I've had conversations with people that are like, hey, how do I get into games writing? I've spoken to classes that are in game design school, that sort of thing. And the real answer is that, especially with games writing in particular, there is no one path into the industry. It's a very strange discipline. And so a lot of my advice is not very helpful on that front. But in terms of just being a writer, I think I can speak to that. And it's just, literally, and I'm sure some of the other folks that have been on have said similar things. You just got to do it. Writing is a skill, just like anything else that humans do, right? Carving wood, fixing a car, baking a cake. The thing that I think a lot of I'll just say, frame it as less experienced writers, I think the thing that they get tripped up on is the ideas component of writing, because having good ideas is awesome, and it's often a sign of creativity, and it's very cool to have good ideas. But the execution of those ideas is what makes a person a writer, right? The title is a job description, just like baker or mechanic, right?
Right.
And just like with those other two professions, if you are not writing, maybe writing is your hobby, but I would not necessarily see you are a professional writer. And so and I want to be really clear, if you're writing as a hobby, first of all, you're still a writer. That's awesome. And dude, my hat's off to you, because writing as a hobby, to me, as a salty old man at the age of 41, that sounds pretty good. I've been doing this now for a long time, and it's definitely one of those things where on some level, be careful about following your passion as a job, because eventually it does become a job, right?
Yep.
I have found, thankfully, I am a salty old man, but I think I've found a good balance where I still genuinely find things to enjoy about both writing games and then obviously writing the podcast, writing some other stuff. I have a couple other projects in the works these days, which is super fun. That was a lot of prevarication for me to say, if you want to be a writer, you gotta sit down and put your hands on the keyboard. That butt in the seat, hands on the keyboard time is no joke. That is the only thing that distinguishes me from anyone who's listening to my voice and doesn't have the portfolio that I did. That's literally it. That's the only difference. I have spent hundreds of thousands of man hours over the course of my lifetime doing this as a discipline. Like that's it. That's the only difference. And so by doing the thing, right? Like you learn stuff. It's exactly like any other discipline where you learn techniques that work for you, you learn techniques that make you successful. And then of course all the other normal, like, I don't think I'm dropping any sort of like knowledge from the mount here. There's a ton of other great resources out there for writers, right? Like in particular, I think that Scalzi is a great follow. If you've ever read John Scalzi's blog, he's got a bunch of really great advice on what it is to be a professional writer. There's a lot of guys like him out there that have, I think, very grounded, practical sort of advice for people that want to like turn it into a thing they do, either professionally or semi-professionally. Good stuff. That was a long answer to a simple question.
I can sum it up for you. I feel like, and because this is what I've talked about many times with our other Grey Rooms authors in Behind the Door episodes, is that the ideas are there, the creativity is there. That's your talent, but writing is the tool that you need to get that talent out. And it's so important to hone that tool and to practice that tool, because maybe newer authors or newer writers get bogged down in thinking they're supposed to be practicing their ideas. The writing is the medium to get the creativity out. You got to know how to put the paragraphs together. You got to know how your idea of this plot is great, but you got to get the beginning and the middle and then the conclusion, hammered correctly to translate that idea. So it's so important to practice that writing side.
I've done a lot of mentoring of writers over the years, both like sort of informally and formally as part of my job. And the biggest thing there, right, is like you can't. It's very hard to give feedback and advice about ideas, right, to sort of expand on what you're saying. But the writing, the work itself, right? If I have a script, if I have a podcast script in my hand, or I have a novel in my hand, that I can give you notes about, right? That I can say, I see what you're doing here, but maybe this, or this is excellent. Do more of this, or like, hey, I'm not sure this is landing the way you want. What if as a suggestion, what if you tried it this way, right? Like those are all things I can say in response to specific structures and work and stuff. But yeah, if we're just sitting around spitballing, that's a little bit more of a high level experience. So yeah.
So moving forward, we've got season 4 slowly coming along here, and you're ever expanding the Grey Rooms world. You said that you're also working on some other projects now. Is there anything that you're allowed to talk about, or is it all NDAs?
Fortunately, no. It is. Okay. They're still in kind of early days, and I can't talk about them. But my day job, which is great, I recently transitioned back to ZeniMax Online Studios. I'm working on the Elder Scrolls Online again. They're always dropping content like it's hot, so I don't know off the top of my head when the release that my stuff is going to show up in, but I'll probably drop it on Twitter or something when it does. So that'll be the kind of the next non-Grey Rooms thing that I'm working on that will show up out in the world. So is the next whatever the thing I'm working on for work is. So yeah, exciting.
Does anyone ever, like, have you ever met someone? You're working on something completely non-related to the Grey Rooms, and you're discussing something with someone. Has anyone ever said, "Oh, Michael Zenke, oh, don't you write for that horror podcast?" Has that ever happened?
I am very grateful that that direct thing has never happened, but I have had people mention to me, "Hey, I know you like horror podcasts. Have you tried the Grey Rooms?" And then I can have that, and then I can have that fun moment where like, "Hey, I do have some passing familiarity with that podcast," and then that's always a fun conversation.
Check the show notes recently. My name is in there. That's awesome. I really appreciate you because.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you too.
Well, thank you. When you joined this team, you fit right in. You were so like you weren't like trying to ingratiate us. You were just you, and you were so polite, and your acumen was so high. Like if we were like, oh, but because you were learning the characters as you were helping us write them, and if we were like, yeah, but maybe he wouldn't say that, or maybe this. In those early days before you really were like, you took over, and we were like, oh my god, we listen to whatever Zenke writes now. And that's where we are now. But in those early days, you were so good at and you still are. This idea of teamwork, of collaboration, of it's your idea, but you bring us into it to help you support it. And if someone was like, this little thing is ticking me wrong here, you've always never been like, yeah, but that's that, and you change it. We all work together, and so
heck yeah, dude.
You just came on right away, and it was perfect synchronicity. So I really appreciate you.
That's a great point. Is that if there is, I don't know, maybe some novel advice that I can offer to writers, it's try to find relationships like that, like whether it's a writing group or even just like a friend you trust who has a good story sense, like that ability to take and receive feedback and then give feedback it's literally invaluable. Like it is one of the most, I think, it is one of the most valuable things a creative person can have, because just like we were talking before about the value of ideas, no one person is going to have all the good ideas. It's why professional novelists, as an example, make heavy use of their editors to help them ensure that their ideas are landing and their narrative is clear. It is I mean this with respect. If you hear me say this and you feel like this lands on you, I hope you do not take this as an indictment. This is just my viewpoint, and I hope you take it on that level. To me, it is a sign of a less experienced writer when they are strongly resistant to feedback, because as a person who's been doing this for as long as I have, the idea that someone would read something I wrote and then tell me what they thought about it and how I could possibly make it better. Oh my God! Like, are you kidding me? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm not saying you should take every note you get. That's just, not every note is going to be of equal value, but just having the ability and the flexibility, just like you're saying, right? Like when I joined the project, you guys were so kind to sort of help me understand the characters. I as a newcomer to the project was not going to understand the characters as well as you guys were. Having the ability to sort of collaborate and integrate with other people's sort of concepts of what the narrative is, that's literally invaluable, super important. So yeah, we couldn't have been more fortunate to gain you as a writer, just because of, again, like I said, like your acumen and just how professional you are. And all of us, thanks,
in our
man.
personal you're welcome, in our personal lives, many things have happened in the last year or two, and we all very much appreciate each other and work well together, and we all believe in this and we trust each other. I think we know that we got each other's back. So you're family, man. I love it.
Thanks, man. Same.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Well, I don't want to bore the listeners any longer with all of this business talk here, so I do want to wrap up and ask if maybe there are some social medias that you wanted to share, anything of the sort, any last parting words?
I am one of those weirdos that is actually really not on social media. Every once in a while I drop onto Twitter when something especially to like give a like to an episode or reshare something that I'm really proud of. But generally speaking, I'm not on much. I'm Zonk on Twitter, Zonk. So if you would like to follow me there, I with apologies, you will probably not see me post very often. But like I said, when the work stuff happens coming up down the line, I will definitely tweet about it there. So yeah, good times.
Well, Zenke, it was great of you for joining us tonight.
Heck
I appreciate
you.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat, and I thank you for helping to create the world of the Grey Rooms with us.
It is my pleasure, sir.
And as usual, the biggest thank you goes out to our fans and followers who listen daily and spread the good word of Bob. #StayGray. Take care and enjoy your evening, Zenke.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.
And good night, folks. Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind